It is the American and Israeli military escapade that is plunging the overall region ever deeper into chaos, caused by the continued aggression of the US and Israel against Iran.
China condemns any attacks against civilians and diplomatic personnel.
President, today's emergency meeting of the Security Council in relation to the latest round of confrontation in Lebanon is taking place in the context of and directly connection with the unprecedented escalation in the Middle East caused by the continued aggression of the US and Israel against Iran. However, our Western partners might try to turn things on their heads and misportray what is happening. It is the American and Israeli military escapade that is plunging the overall region ever deeper into chaos, taking an ever-rising number of human lives and causing irreversible damage to civilian infrastructure. Serious consequences are already being felt by many Middle Eastern countries that we count among our friends. Unfortunately, Lebanon is no exception to this. It has once again suffered large-scale attacks from Israel. It is telling that even before the current escalation, Israeli leadership had repeatedly and openly threatened Lebanon with a renewal of large-scale military action. Judging by the public statements by representative of the General Staff of the IDF, plans to clear the Lebanese territory had long been in the making. At the same time, the Israelis have been repeatedly violating the agreements of 2024 that were reached with the mediation of the US and France when it comes to withdrawing their contingents to the south of the Blue Line, as well as when it comes to stopping arbitrary attacks and strikes on Lebanon. President, we'd like to emphasize that we have always shared and continue to understand the legitimate concerns of our Israeli partners when it comes to the security of their country. We understand the motivations that caused West Jerusalem to begin their military operation against Lebanon. The military action of March 2nd against Israel and subsequent missile and drone attacks on the central region of Israel could, of course, only lead to extreme alarm and concern. At the same time, we believe that the IDF's response over the past 10 days was disproportionate and excessive. As seen in regular reports from the UN Secretariat, the Israelis are ignoring norms of international humanitarian law, conducting strikes against civilian targets inter alia, which have led to many casualties among the civilian population. Over the past 4 days alone, the Israeli armed forces have attacked more than 60 towns. The disproportionate response of West Jerusalem is clearly demonstrated by the number of casualties of the creeping Israeli invasion. According to the Lebanese Ministry of Health, since March 2nd, about 500 people have died, including 80 children, and the number of wounded is in the hundreds. At the same time, on a near daily basis, the Israeli command is publishing evacuation warnings for densely populated regions of Lebanon, including the southern and capital suburbs, leading to mass panic among local residents. Hundreds of thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes and seek shelter. The number of IDPs is estimated at 400 to 800,000 people, which, given the dire socioeconomic situation of Lebanon, will inevitably lead to problems with meeting basic needs, including access to food. President, the continued escalation, besides the dire humanitarian consequences, is jeopardizing the protection and integrity of cultural heritage in Lebanon. During the previous Israeli military campaign, we witnessed the serious damage done to historic monuments of the Arab Republic, including sites in Baalbek and Tyre, which were on the UNESCO World Heritage List. The current Israeli operation has directly affected the Russian Culture House in the city of Nabatea, which is operating jointly with the Russian Development Aid Agency. On March 8th, after a targeted missile strike, the 5-story building of the Russian Culture House was destroyed. We strongly condemn this attack. We view it as an act of military aggression against an institution that was acting solely for humanitarian educational purposes. Lebanese children have long attended classes in that house. No military activities were carried out there. We once again warn that indiscriminate attacks on civilian targets and diplomatic missions in Lebanon are unacceptable. On March 8th, 4 employees of the Iranian embassy in Beirut were killed, and yesterday the Russian general consulate in Isfahan was struck. This is unacceptable. In addition, attacks on personnel of UNIFIL deployed in the south of the country are unacceptable. In this context, we join the position of the Secretary General of the UN, who on March 6th condemned an incident involving a UNIFIL contingent, as a result of which 3 Ghanaian peacekeepers were wounded. We wish them a speedy recovery and call for unconditional guarantees of the safety of peacekeepers. President, in the current explosive environment, we call on West Jerusalem to refrain from using force in its interactions with Lebanon and to return to upholding its international legal obligations, including under Resolution 1701 of the Security Council. Instead of its destructive, confrontation-oriented policy, it is high time for the Israeli leadership to listen to the position of Beirut, which favors immediate de-escalation and is prepared for direct negotiations with Israel. Equally important in this context is the decision of the Lebanese government itself to strengthen state institutions and to establish control over all parts of the country. For our part, we reiterate our unchanged support for the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of Lebanon, as well as the mandate of UNIFIL in accordance with the relevant SC resolutions. We believe that there's no alternative to immediately ceasing hostilities, returning to political and humanitarian efforts, and taking real steps to prevent a broader war in the Middle East. We believe that diplomatic efforts have not yet been exhausted. The parties ought to show political will and to refrain from further violence. These were our aims in preparing the Russian draft resolution of the Security Council on the escalation in the Middle East, distributed a few days ago, which will be examined today in the Council. Our document, unlike the text promoted by our colleagues from Bahrain, is non-confrontational in nature and takes into account the regional dimension of current events, including the suffering of the Lebanese people. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Russia for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
谢谢主席。
Thank you, President. I thank USG DeCarlo, USG Lacroix, USG Fletcher, and Ms. Hafouche for their briefings. The current escalation of fighting in the Middle East is spreading, and the situation between Lebanon and Israel has also sharply intensified. The continuation of hostilities serves the interests of no party. The international community should pool its efforts to promote peace, de-escalate the tensions ASAP so as to restore peace and stability in the region. First, an immediate ceasefire must be promoted to end the fighting. Recently, Hezbollah and Israel has continued to exchange fire. Israel has launched intense attacks on towns in southern Lebanon and on Beirut, expanding its military control over southern Lebanon. These attacks have already resulted in the deaths of more than 570 people, including a large number of women and children. We have noted that Iran's letter to the Security Council stating that 4 Iranian diplomats were killed in the attack. The protection of civilians' armed conflict is a red line under international law. China condemns any attacks against civilians and diplomatic personnel. We call on all parties to cease hostilities, promote de-escalation, and fulfill their obligations under international law, in particular international humanitarian law. Israel should immediately withdraw its troops from Lebanon. We welcome the positive statement by the Lebanese government expressing its commitment to ending the conflict and support safeguarding Lebanon's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. Second, Lebanon should be supported in stabilizing its domestic situation. The heavy shelling has dealt a severe blow to Lebanon's security and stability. More than 700,000 people have been displaced, and already difficult humanitarian situation has further deteriorated. The international community should increase assistance to Lebanon and support the Lebanese government in stabilizing domestic situation and ensuring the basic livelihood of the people. We have taken note of the decision by the Lebanese parliament to extend its term. We welcome the efforts of the Lebanese government to strengthen governance over the country and hope that all parties in Lebanon will actively engage in political dialogue and properly resolve the differences. Third, the safety of UNIFIL personnel must be effectively ensured. On March the 6th, an attack against UNIFIL injured 3 peacekeepers. China strongly condemns the attack and expresses its sympathies to the injured. Any deliberate attack on UN's peacekeepers constitutes a serious violation of international humanitarian law and Security Council Resolution 1701 and must be firmly opposed and held accountable. The current tensions once again highlights the important role of UNIFIL. China urges all parties to ensure the safety and freedom of movement of UNIFIL personnel so that the mission can effectively carry out its mandate. China stands ready to work with the international community to make unremitting efforts to calm the situation between Lebanon and Israel and to restore peace and stability in Lebanon and the Middle East region. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.